Now we see this second seal, and when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat therein to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. For remember, Jesus said, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." We read that, right? You see the parallel. Now I say, and there's a red horse there with a big sword, but I say, consider this. I want you to think about this and see how close we are to the end. From 1900 to 1946, the world experienced more than 120 armed conflicts. That's over 2 per year. From 1946 to 2001, and some of my stats are a little too old. I would like to have even newer stuff. But this actually serves the point. Between 1946 and 2001, there were 225 wars, which were 4 a year. It doubled. And this goes all the way back to 2001. Just think what it is today. You can't even go places in the world without you can get your head cut off. There's people that blow themselves up. How do you get somebody to believe if they blow themselves up, they're going to get 7 virgins? How do you get the Muslims I'm talking about? How do you get somebody to believe that? Besides that, if you blow yourself up, what good's it going to do? Your pieces are gone. Here's a part of you, and there's a part of you, and you got 7 virgins, all right. Besides that, if you do I know somebody that knew Arabic, and they actually read the words, the prophecy of Muhammad. They said he didn't say you'd get 7 virgins. He said you'd get 7 white raisins. That's the word in Arabic. And so they've been teaching these poor men that they're going to get these virgin, and white raisins in that time were precious. And so Muhammad was trying to describe how God was going to reward them. And they were very rare. And he said, you get these white raisins. And people are giving their lives up and blowing up their parts. I mean, it's crazy. It's scary. Then, in 1914 through 1918, we had World War I. You think that wasn't a sign of the Red Horse? Total mobilized military force of the Allied nations, which was France, British Empire, Russia, Italy, and the U.S., 6 other smaller countries with more than 42 million. Of this number, about 5 million were killed in action, with over 3 million civilian casualties. The cost incurred by the Allies was approximately $194 billion. That don't sound like a lot when we're talking trillions today. Incidentally, did you know that Barack Obama, in his administration, doubled the national debt? It was like 8 trillion. And I mean, that's after George Bush. They blame everything on George Bush. But that's after George Bush, $8 trillion. Obama brought it up to, now it's what, 20? Oh my goodness. And he keeps going. I mean, it'd be great if I could just sit there and write checks. I do have some of those plastics but I found out you can get yourself in a load of trouble. But anyway, we also had on the other side a total mobilized military force of Central Powers. Germany, Austria, Hungary, Turkey, Bulgaria was about 23 million, of which over 3 million were killed in action. Their cost was something over 86 billion, and it took, look at this, just from World War I, it took until September 2010 for Germany's World War I debt to finally be paid off. 2010. Then you have World War II. World War I wasn't bad enough. Here goes that sword, with that red horse again, riding through. Combined figures for both Allies and Axis powers, 105 million total mobilized forces, of which 15 million were killed in action. Up to 34 million civilians were killed, and the total cost was $1.6 trillion. And if you lived back then, $1.6 trillion was a lot. And nothing like trillions when they talk about today. Anybody know who this is? You can't even, I mean, everybody in the world knows who this is, don't they? Look at this. The Holocaust. Adolf Hitler. You can see the red horse right there on his picture. 6 killing centers were located. What does it say? I can't read it there. Located near Poland. Multiple railroad lines facilitated a constant flow of trainloads of victims. At Treblinka, some 750,000 or more Jews were murdered by a staff of approximately 150. Fewer than 100 known survivors of Treblinka were found. At Sobibor, up to 250,000 Jews were murdered in carbon monoxide gas chambers. A revolt was staged there by 300 prisoners in the camp. While attempting to escape, many were killed. By the end of the war, there were only 50 known survivors. At Belzec, up to 600,000 Jews and a few thousand gypsies were murdered. And at Kelmno, up to 360,000 Jews were killed. Thousands of gypsies, Poles, Soviet prisoners of wars were also exterminated. Birkenau was the largest and deadliest, I'm up to the right-hand corner, of all the Nazi death camps. Here were the biggest, newest, most efficient gas chambers, which used the vapors from Zyklon B pellets to kill Jews, Poles, Gypsies, and Soviet prisoners of war. Many more Jews, 1.1 million, were killed here than the other groups represented. At Majdanek, nearly 500,000 from 28 different countries were murdered, according to the Polish sources. About 360,000, more than 70%, many of which were Poles, died there from starvation, exhaustion, disease, and beating. 7 gas chambers were employed using Zyklon B pellets, as were the camp's 2 wooden gallows. Is that bad? Is that bad? That's a red horse. And things haven't even started yet. Many contemporary historians and scholars view the Holocaust as an anomaly, which is a freak occurrence. How many believe that? It was just a freak occurrence? We don't have to worry about that. Man's not like that. No, this guy was like the son of the devil. In fact, we brought this up in a previous, when we were looking at the 7 churches. We talked about Hitler just a little bit. We said Hitler was a type of Antichrist. His reign of persecution was a 7-year period. He did to the Jews what's going to happen to the whole world during Antichrist's reign. He was a type and a pattern, I'll guarantee you that. And that's why I say his body was probably burned. Not only do they report that, but that's the Antichrist is going to be thrown in the lake of fire, it says. They believe that man has now developed to a higher order, more considerate, tolerant than the ancients. In fact, the only problem they have with tolerance is us. Bible believers. Get rid of the Bible believers. And then we can have true tolerance where everybody thinks, accepts all religions equally. That's never going to happen to this guy. Because I'm standing on this earth with one thing in mind. I'm going to tell people who Jesus is. Now, look at here out of that same Olivet Discourse, Matthew chapter 24, 21 through 22 and verse 25. It says, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be, and except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved." How many will be saved? None. If God doesn't intervene, none will be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. That may very well represent the rapture. Now, I don't know. I can't say that for sure, but it sounds pretty good anyway. "Behold, I have told you before." In other words, Jesus said, don't be surprised at any of this. I've warned you. I've warned you about this. I told you before. Israel plays a major, God is not done with Israel. And yet most of the church says God gave up on Israel a long time ago. As far as they're concerned, and you can look at their doctrine and their teachings all the way down from when they were founded. They never taught Israel was going to be reestablished. Only people who read and believed the Bible did. So there's a problem because most of the church didn't. In other words, they read it, but they didn't believe it. It's not enough to read it. You have to believe it. This is still the second seal we're talking, or the second seal, the red horse, where we can see here in verse 6, you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, see that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. And so many have said that now they realize that maybe that sword in the red horse's hand, which is so destructive, maybe it is nuclear. Maybe it represents nuclear. We're living in a nuclear age.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, one of the reasons they come up with the United Nations is to try to prevent all of this, these other countries from having nuclear weapons. How good of a job have they done? And here's down here, you got these, the ISIS troops with their missile launchers or whatever.